Go.
Energy. So hi everyone. Thank you for coming to the UWIGS Geological Society again. Woo! Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. Come here. So now what you're here for is to listen to our member or special guest from the JCCYC. For those of you who don't know what the JCCYC is, that is the Jamaica Climate Change Youth Council. So our speaker for today is none other than Miss Eleanor Terrelonge. So I'm going to tell you some things about Eleanor now. So in 2018, Eleanor, she was a Jamaica Prime Minister Youth Awardee for Environmental Protection, and she is dedicated to environmental advocacy. What's that? And action through youth involvement in climate change. She is the founder and director of the Jamaica Climate Change Youth Council, and that was formed in 2017. It's a youth volunteer group that raises awareness about climate change among other young Jamaicans. She has represented Jamaica as a youth climate change and sustainability advocate in initiatives across the Caribbean region. She's not local people, international. So she's currently pursuing a PhD in molecular biology at the UWIMONA, right? And she's also building a career.
Let me
Hi,
play.
she's also building a career as a science communicator and writer. So everyone, please welcome Miss Eleanor Terrelonge.
Woo!
Woo!
Thank you for having me, guys.
No problem.
Flying children, let me
Hello,
fly.
Yasin. Okay. So yeah, Eleanor, you're up.
Oh, hi. I'm not sure what you wanted me to just jump into it.
Yeah, you can just jump into it because when we sent out flyers and stuff about JCCYC, a lot of people really don't know what the JCCYC is about. What do you actually do? Some people are like climate change advocacy. What is that? So, can you tell us some more about that?
Sure. All right. So the JCCYC, the Jamaica Climate Change Youth Council, as Gabrielle would have mentioned, we're a youth volunteer group. So we're all volunteers. We're not making any money from this. And what we try to do is, first of all, kind of create a space for young people that are interested in climate advocacy to be able to participate in whether it's awareness or advocacy or different aspects under climate change. So when we started in 2017, so pre-COVID, we did a lot of school awareness. So we would have gone into primary schools. We had a high school expo that we did every year. So we really focused on just building general awareness of what climate change is and why young people should actually care and be involved. Because something that we say at the JCCYC is that we are the generation that must climate change. So we're the ones that are going to experience the effects of it. And of course, we're the ones that really have to kind of champion any kind of change that we want to see. So that's the basis of, kind of our mandates and our vision as a council. Then COVID came, and we couldn't really do the in-person activities that we used to do. So we used to do tree plantings, beach cleanups, community cleanups, all of those things. But we kind of had to rethink, what are we going to do? How do we keep the conversation going? And we kind of concluded after 2020 that we can focus a lot more on climate advocacy, especially during this year until we kind of are able to go back to the face-to-face activities. So in terms of our advocacy work, so last year we would have started with the controversy surrounding the Dry Harbor Mountains, for example. That was a topical issue towards the end of last year, where the Prime Minister, were appealing to the Prime Minister to rethink the decision to allow mining in that area. So we would have been a part of an advocacy campaign, would have written letters to the Prime Minister along with other youth groups. Had that kind of conversation. We didn't get the result that we wanted at the time per se, but it's still an ongoing process because even that development, they're going to have to go on and apply for a mining lease. So there are more steps down the road that we will continue our advocacy around. And on the topic of advocacy, I do want to say that if you are a young person and interested in advocacy, just know that it's a long-term process. You definitely don't see short-term results. It's something that I'm learning as well. We're all learning in this process. But in terms of what advocacy is, so what we have realized is that as young people with a voice, and we're able to use social media, and we're connected to all of these stakeholders, we have the opportunity to advocate on behalf of other young people who don't necessarily have those same opportunities. What we want to ensure is that, for example, young people in rural areas able to have a lives and livelihoods and be able to make money, whether it's from their farm or just to have a clean, healthy environment to live in. They might not have access to the same stakeholders that we have access to. So as a council, we kind of take it up as our responsibility to be able to advocate on behalf of those individuals. Another example of what we do in terms of community work is our Albion Heights Green Community Project. Yes, I know you're waiting for me to say that, Gabriel. So Albion Heights, it's a rural community in St. Thomas. They don't have access to JPS, water commission, regular garbage collection. None of that happens. So what we're doing is solving these problems, but doing it in a sustainable way. So we put in a recycling program, for example, giving them so that the community can, collect their plastic bottles and be able to make some money off of it, because Recycling Partners of Jamaica has a bottle buyback program. We're putting in water harvesting equipment, because as I said, they're not connected to water commission. They don't have a regular water supply. So at least they'll be able to store some water and be able to use it in their households. And we'll also be putting in some solar technology, that is solar street lamps. And for some of the houses, actually being able to power some of their appliances using solar technology. So the Albion Heights project is really an example of how we have kind of going into a community and being able to help them solve these problems, but kind of creating a model of what we want to see rural communities, the way that we want to see rural communities develop going forward. So we're hoping that it will kind of, work out and it can serve as a pilot for other similar communities. So that's kind of basically in a nutshell. I hope I touched on everything. Just what we do, a rundown of the things that we have been doing over the past almost 4 years.
All right, thank you so much. So in this online space, how can some people become involved with the JCCYC and help out?
Right now, everything that we're doing is online. So since Dominic is here, I'm just gonna ask Dominic to drop in the chat. Dominic is our PR director. He can drop in the chat the sign up link if you're interested in signing up. What we do, we have different subcommittees, because I'm guessing this is UWIGS Geological Society, so everybody here has a geology background, but you might not, that might not be what you love. So for example, you might love to do graphic design, so we put you on the graphic design team. Or you might love to plan projects, so we put you on the project planning team. What we try to do is align people's skills, or align, whatever you like to do, find an activity that you can fit into. Because it is voluntary work, and I've realized that being involved in volunteerism, it takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot of time and energy from you. So what we try to do is to make it as easy as possible for you to already, do what you're already doing. Just do it as part of the JCCYC. So Dominic is gonna drop that in the chat. You can sign up, you can join our email list, and then from there we can set you up with whatever subcommittee you might be interested in. So we have, I guess I can run down the subcommittees quickly. So we have the project planning team, which plans the projects. We have the PR and communication team, which does everything PR, social media, traditional media, anything to do with communications. That's the PR subcommittee. We have the research and policy development committee. So these are people that love to read. We're going through the different environmental policies, looking at, and this is going to be very important for advocacy, because we're really looking at what exists in Jamaica and where we need to see change, and then champion that kind of change. So that is what the research and policy development team is really focused on. And then we have the outreach and recruitment. So that is the arm that's basically responsible for getting new members. That is the arm that really does the outreach with schools and different community groups and that sort of thing. So those are the teams, and there is the link in the chat, so you can just subscribe there, and we'll add you to our email list, and then we can talk from there.
All right, thanks, Eleanor. So, quick question. And guys, remember you can ask questions or drop comments at any time or unmute your mic and speak. But for some people who they're literally just hearing about JCCYC for the first time, what would you say has been the greatest thing that the organization has done so far, as well as what would you say has been the hardest challenge that you've faced so far in advocacy?
In terms of greatest thing that we've done so far, I'm gonna say the Albion Heights project because personally I am very even bigger than a particular project or initiative. I think the fact that we're not even 4 years old, but we have an organization that is running, that is doing things in the climate change space, and we've actually been able to earn the respect of a lot of the stakeholders in the field, like the ministries, climate change division, the various international groups, UNDP, UNESCO, that sort of thing. We've really been able to kind of establish ourselves as a youth group. We're here, we're serious, we're not just some young people who talk about this for a couple of days and then we disappear. And I've really seen the response to us change over the past 4 years. If you were with us in the beginning, and nobody never take us seriously, we'd have to cuss and beg and just to get into rooms and have meetings. And now these same people are calling me 24/7. Hey, can you do this? Hey, I need some young people to do this. Hey, we have some money to spend. So for me, I think that the fact that I've been able to see young people inspired and to them stay inspired and to keep doing work. I think for me that shows that we are the generation that is here to really create solutions. It's very inspiring for me. In terms of the hardest parts of advocacy, it's gonna continue in that same vein because, as I said, it took us a while to gain respect in the field, but we still don't have the respect of the Jamaican public. That's just a fact. A lot of times when we're talking about environmental advocacy, the general public, thinks of us as these tree huggers, and all we care about is the trees and the birds and the rivers, and we don't care about people and their livelihoods. And I think that that's unfortunate because it's actually the opposite. If you are involved in climate change work, you know how much of what we do is about protecting people, and protecting people's future. So in terms of the greatest challenges in advocacy, we've heard how we're too young. Young people don't commit to anything. This is just a 9-day wonder. We need to go look work. I've heard how we're being paid. The amount of times me hear say me I get money to do this advocacy thing, and I would just love somebody to give me some money to do this advocacy thing. If I was getting money, I swear I would be like on the street. But that's something that people say, that we're being funded, and a lot of it is really just things that they throw out there. When you're talking about any sort of civil society group, it's going to be the same set of complaints. So for me, it at first it was kind of discouraging because that you're going into it with pure intentions. You know that you're doing this for the love of your country and the love of the people in your country. But it's these same people I will come on Twitter and cuss you until they say I have no sense. So at first it was a little discouraging personally. But something I learned last year is that you really can't be afraid of anybody in this advocacy game. You're back off abroad. And that is why organizations are so important, because every individual might not feel comfortable necessarily being confrontational in that type of way. But when you are a part of an organization and you have people that are willing to go out there as the front lines, but you can still do participate in the advocacy behind the scenes and different activities if you're not comfortable with being the one cussing the prime minister on the news. That has been difficult, and I think that I haven't seen the results of the advocacy that I would like to see. But I also will admit that it is a long-term process, and I just don't think that we've gotten to that point yet where we can say, we advocated for this and it changed this particular decision. It would be nice to kind of have that under our belt, but I think that will come in time. As we're pretty young still, we're not even 4 years old. So I am proud of what we've been able to achieve.
Ooh, Kimo is talking. Okay, so I'm glad that you touched on that. So based on what you said in the last part, that we have to understand that it's a long-term process. In the next 5 years, where do you think JCCYC will reach, or what would you like to see JCCYC achieve?
Well, in the next 5 years, I hope to have handed JCCYC over to someone younger than me, because I will be pushing the upper limit of the organization. And I also think that I never created it to be my baby. I created it for young people. So I'm not personally attached. So I would love to hand it over within the next 5 years and see it grow and flourish more than, yes, there's an age limit. We cut off at 35, but if you don't tell us, we won't cut yours. um, but in terms of the space that I would like to see JCCYC operate, I think what we would really want to do is kind of be a hub for so there are different groups that are involved in climate change advocacy or environmental advocacy, even if it's not necessarily their specific mandate. So, for example, I know a lot of Rotaract clubs do a lot of environmental projects, even though Rotaract is not an environmental organization per se. So what I think the JCCYC can do is kind of act as that hub or that glue, to kind of be a space that all of these different organizations can uh, come to for resources, be able to do knowledge. Something that I really want the JCCYC to do. We've started in terms of capacity building. We had a capacity building retreat. And I think that that's something that I would love us to continue to do in a greater way, because you have young people that are interested in climate change. Even when I started, I was interested in climate change, but we never know the first thing about climate change. We never really, like, I knew what it meant in the scientific sense, but that was about it. We never know which ministry it deal with. We never know who to talk to. We never understand the COPs. I knew what COP was, but I never really understand how the negotiations go and all of those things. So for me, I had to learn that trial and error file. And what I really wanted to do, having gone through that process, is to be able to provide young people with that information in a much easier way, so that, from your interest in climate change, you can come, you can learn all of these things, and then you are in yourself equipped to be able to execute, whether it's a project in your community. Because even if you don't do something with the JCCYC, I would still like to see young people to be able to get something from the organization that they can then take back into their own personal space. I would like us to have even more respect from ministry. I do think that we have earned a foot in the door, a seat at the table, whatever you want to call it. But I do kind of still feel like it's a little bit tokenistic for them to say, oh, we have young people on board, and that's it. So I would like us to kind of really get into those rooms and make up noise and agitate and be able to create some actual change. I think definitely in 5 years, I want to at least have that one thing under our belt to say that, hey, we did advocacy here and it influenced this decision here. So I think that's it for now. I think after COVID, after we see what happens after COVID, we can kind of flesh that out a little bit more. I see somebody asking how old I am. I'm 27. Does the council interact with international youth councils? We do. I look like 20. I know. Thanks. I'm 16 at heart. We do. We have also have relationships with regional youth groups in particular. So I had the opportunity to attend a UNESCO conference, and I was able to connect with a lot of youth groups within the Caribbean, and we've really built a really strong regional network that that we can pull from a lot of the time. And even in a thing like climate change, when you think of it in the international context, Jamaica versus all of these big countries is just this one like island. But at least when you have the power of a Caribbean versus the bigger countries, you have a lot more power on the international stage. And I think that, we really have to be looking for these synergies, because we're fighting against forces that are bigger and more powerful and have more money than we do.
All right, so I have two more questions. I hope I remember them. So one, Can you tell us about citizen science? That the first time I found out about citizen science was from M when we had a climate change retreat, and like I only found out about citizen science from M. So can you tell us about citizen science as well as the Caribbean region as well? I don't think we realize how important it is as a region it is for us to band together. So if you could touch more on that, that would be great as well.
All right, so I'm going to do citizen science first. So citizen science is really exactly what it sounds like. It is equipping regular, untrained scientists to be able to do very simple, not even simple, but be able to do scientific research. So it's teaching them the basic, everybody's in here is a scientist. So the basic the scientific process. So you collect data, you analyze data, and then you're able to make conclusions and that sort of thing. So so citizen science is there, and there are different ways that it's done. Because you have, for example, you'll have projects that are specifically geared to citizen science, so it's very structured. And then you might have informal citizen science, because a lot of times citizen science is very informal and we don't think of it as science per se. But if you are, for example, if you are in a community and there's a river in your community, you know, say when is rainy season? Every October, the river come down and overflow its bank. You know that is something that's happened. But if you just record, say, hey, last year the river come down in October, this year it come down in September. That's such a simple observation. But that is information that you can feed into science and feed into a study and feed into research. And then you can look at trends and patterns over time. So citizen science is really, and it's really useful because if you target persons in their own community, all they're doing is collecting data from around them. So you don't have to send somebody out into this area to collect data, and then they have to go out there how much days, or you have to pay and feed them all that. No, you have the people already in the community, and they already have the context and institutional memory that can guide them. Because even when you go in as a scientist from the outside, a lot of times you don't have the same context that the person living in the community would have, and that same sort of institutional memory. And that's why citizen science, it's really important, because it gives you access to those things that you might not get through, quote unquote, the traditional scientific process. So that's basically citizen science. I hope I explained it. I'm not sure. I don't know if any citizen science programs in any organized citizen science programs in Jamaica per se, but you guys might know of them. What was the other question? Oh, about why the Caribbean must band together. Okay, so climate change is a global thing, right? And the sad truth about it is that even though little countries like us contribute the least to climate change, so we don't have the whole heap of emissions that the US and the China and all of those places have. But the fact is, when we're talking about effects of climate change, we are going dead first. So are we the hurricane that going to kill? Are we when the sea level rise and downtown wipe out and all of the coastal villages wipe out and we have to move in? And are we going to kill? That is the truth. But when you go to an international negotiation, so when you go to COP, which is Conference of the Parties, this is the annual climate change conference that all of the countries come to. So you might have heard of the Paris Agreement. So COP was held in Paris in 2015. So the Paris Agreement was the agreement that was signed at that COP. And what the Paris Agreement says is that all of the countries that signed are going to do their part to help with climate change. That's basically the essence of the Paris Agreement. Everybody has agreed to do their part. The problem with the Paris Agreement is that it is. So countries it's called nationally determined contribution. So each country is supposed to look at their own economy, what they can do, look at their own situation and say, okay, this is what we're going to do to assist with climate change. The problem is that when you have something like that, you don't really have any sort of accountability. So if everybody's making up their own rules, then who is really going to be able to say, hey? So that's why they go to COP every year and they have these negotiations. And the point of the negotiations is to, if you see a country that's not doing enough, in your opinion? It's really to have the negotiation to convince them to do more. So I said all of that to say, so when you go to COP and you have these big countries like the US and the China and the Russia with them oil money and them coal money, and them put on the conference, because a lot of times, let me just say this, a lot of times COP is sponsored by fossil fuel companies. Yeah, so you can't really go to people them event because a certain
That's
thing.
so ironic. What?
Very ironic, but it's
Why
true.
would they do that?
The question, didn't America pull out? Yes, America did pull out, but they rejoined earlier this year, so they're back in the Paris Agreement. Yeah. So when you go to these international negotiations and you're up against these big, powerful countries that have the money, arguing as a Jamaica, you're arguing as just this one little voice out of the whole world, and the people in China are like, so why should we care about you? But when you have and what they're called are small island developing states, so SIDS, you might have seen that. What those, so countries like Caribbean countries, also those in the Philippines, all of the small islands all over the world where they um, are kind of the ones that they had to come together as a coalition and negotiate from the point of view as a coalition to be able to get that kind of clout behind them, as opposed to just being this one like a tiny country. At least they're representing a group. You might have heard of the 1.5 to stay alive. Don't know if you've ever heard that. Okay, never heard of it. No problem. So 1.5 to stay alive means that we need to reduce the temperature rise by, it can't go over 1.5 degrees C, right? How 1.5 came about is that when they started the Paris Agreement, it was at 2 degrees C. That was the threshold that said, if we go over, we're going to try to keep emissions, we're going to try to keep temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius. But the Caribbean, specifically Jamaica and the Caribbean, so wait a minute, we're going to do that 1.5. So we can't, this 2 degrees C now go work for us. So they would have done negotiations to bring that down to the 1.5. So the 1.5 to stay alive campaign in itself is an example of how that coalition negotiation would have changed I guess the threshold that all of the other countries would then kind of use as their benchmark. So it's no, the goal is no reduce temperature increase to 1.5 degrees C. In reality, that ain't happening. I don't want to get all depressing, but that ain't happening. So
if it's not happening, like, what is it going to take for people to really be serious? Because I mean, we know, but like, what do they think we're pretending, or they're like, oh, when they're done gone, we won't be here.
they just
So
don't
we'll
care. The people, and it's a sad truth, but if something is not affecting you directly, then people don't care, and it's affecting them, especially when you are being funded by a lot of these interests. Like, why you gonna stop take the money because some little people in Jamaica got dead? How that gonna affect you? That is the truth. But I think that what we can do, so when we talk about climate change, we talk about climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation. So those are terms that if you're in the space, you'll hear of a lot. So what mitigation is about is reducing in essence, reducing the amount of greenhouse gases that we are emitting, basically. So mitigation is about lessening our contribution to climate change to mitigate the effects. Adaptation is, these changes are happening. What do we need to do as a country to adapt to these changes? So how do we respond? So when I have conversations like this, I like to say, which I might get in trouble for it, but in Jamaica, we don't really have the luxury of exploring all of these grand mitigation tools. I mean, it's important that we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, but in the global scheme of zero, if the other countries aren't doing the same, we still are dead. And I think for us, we really have to focus a lot more on the adaptation part of it, because this is how we equip ourselves to be able to survive. So we talk about resilience, we talk about resilient farming. So we're making sure that, we know the hurricane are going going to equip the farmers to be able to plant in a way that their entire crop is not going to be wiped out because of a hurricane. So all of those early warning systems, all of those things are adaptation measures. So personally, I think that for us, we really have to focus way more on adaptation as opposed to mitigation. Um, but that's just me. I'm not. And it is still important to mitigate because we do want to reduce our greenhouse gases just for our own air quality. And just in terms of just in economic, I mean, green energy has so much economic potential, and we really need to move from the fossil fuel age. So yeah. Have there been any conversations with government about building new homes on stilts? I have no idea, but I can find out. Because I know that, for example, my mom is from Guyana, and because they're below sea level, a lot of the houses are built on stilts. So that is definitely something that can be explored. But I don't know the pros and cons of it, but I can find out. It's going to take climate refugees. I like that somebody mentioned climate refugees because that is I don't even say the next step because we already have so many climate refugees. And we in Jamaica might very well end up being climate refugees. I don't know if you remember, well, you should remember, Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas last year, no, year before last year, a very, 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 very bad hurricane
Oh, that wiped out everything basically.
that basically wiped out everything. And I don't remember if you recall, but a couple days after, they were trying to get into the US because they never have nowhere to go. Them all smash up. And it was a whole thing about whether or not they're going to be allowed in the US or not, who them let in, visas. That is just one example of what happens. So those people are now climate refugees. They've lost their homes to climate change. They must find somewhere else. We already have refugee and migrant problems across the world that is just going to be exacerbated by climate change. So think about Jamaica. If, God forbid, please God, don't bother send it and test me. But God forbid that we have a hurricane like Dorian and all our house smash up. Where are we gonna go? We're an island. We don't have no bar that can hop. We know you're gonna go to your aunts. That's right. I don't know you're gonna reach. But yeah, we don't have no bar that can hop. We have to go either take boat. Hopefully the airport to mash up so we can still fly out. And so the airport are gonna mash up first because it's on the sea. So all of these things we have to think about. And that, I mean, we can say God forbid, but that is the reality, and that is what we have to prepare for and put things in place from before, so that we don't end up in a situation for to not have anywhere to go. All of our main buildings are at the sea. I always say any day downtown flood out, Jamaica mash up, because everything is down there and it's right on the sea, and we don't seem to care. So I think a lot of it is really reframing how we think about our country and development and what we prioritize. Because even things that don't seem like climate change actions are climate change actions. So, for example, very simple, digitizing the records at the Bank of Jamaica. It doesn't sound like it have anything to do with climate change, right? So, like something we just do because it's 2021 and hello. But when you do that, you avoid downtown flooding out and the whole of BLJ records being lost because they're now digital. So when we talk about climate change solutions, there's so many and they're so far reaching. It's not just about planting trees. I'm sorry, I'm so tired of hearing about tree planting. Like, tree planting is very important, but we need to be tree planting and that's where we, in reality, that's where we are. We can't just plant tree and clap ourselves and say, oh, we plant 10 tree, we are saving the planet, when we still are dead. I think it will take visual scare tactics to get people to understand what's going on. I agree with you, but people don't agree with me. Them saying you shouldn't scare people, because some people do respond to it, some people don't. And especially with COVID-19 going on, a lot of people are already very depressed and overwhelmed. Depressing them, giving them more depressing news on top of that doesn't always motivate them to change. It kind of can also feel like, well, the world I got in anyway, so why do I care? So I think you have to kind of you can scare people sometimes. I guess it depends on who you're talking to. So But I personally am a big believer of scaring people into action.
Thank you again, guys. You can unmute and ask questions. One last question from me, Eleanor. Do you think, and a lot of people don't really want to hear from us youth, or if we put forward solutions, they're like, oh, that's not going to work anyways. But do you think those who are already in the space, like the scientists and so on, do you think that they're doing enough work?
The scientists definitely. Even I mean, in terms of when you look at climate research worldwide, that climate studies group with Prof. Michael Taylor. I don't know if you guys are, yeah, because this is Geo. Yeah. So Prof. Taylor's group, when you he has that group has international recognition when it comes to climate change research. Right. So when you hear the names in climate change, you always hear Prof. Taylor and Prof. What other one name? Anthony Clayton. Yeah. So you hear those names from the international people, so they're known. So the problem is not that we have a gap in research, and this doesn't only apply to climate change. We don't have shortage of scientists in Jamaica. We don't have a shortage of studies. We don't have a shortage of data. What we have a problem doing is implementing solutions based on the research. That is where the gap is. And we love to form, commission, and write reports sitting on a shelf, and you don't hear about it any at all. So we have a lot of governance issues that create barriers, and it's not just for this. It's across the board. But I think when it relates to climate change, I do think that there isn't the political will behind it that we would need kind of see the change. It's not, even if you remember last election how we'd have to beg for them ask a little one climate change question in the debate. It's not an issue. It's not a voting issue. It don't come up. They're just put lip service to it. Said tell them that them plant 300 trees, and that's it. And I think what we have to do is reframe how we think about climate change from the top down, because it's so important for us to do things at the community level, but there are certain things that have to come top down when it comes to policy and legislation and enforcement. Those things have from the top. I think that what we really need to do is kind of find a way to better bridge the gap between the scientists and the technical experts and the policymakers to kind of, I don't even know how to do that, to be honest, but to really motivate them to take action in that kind of way. I strongly believe in extremism. Who is this Rob Youth person? Me feel like you're my soul, me soul sister, my soul brother. Like we go burn down Babylon together. Yes.
Can you hear me actually?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi. Okay, so the screen name is wrong. It just wouldn't sign in on all my other accounts. My name is Aliyah. I'm from the Eco Store. I yeah, I do mean that. But I don't know if it comes off wrong to other people, but I think it's the difference between us and a lot of other countries, because they're willing to go to that place that they can, a lot of people be like, oh, but them can't take you seriously if you act like that and you act in childish. But I feel like everybody else is willing to go there to get attention. So the fact that we're not is why we can't get the same level of attention.
Yeah, you're totally right. Even as we don't have a history of being a revolutionary country, we never yet overthrow government or anything like that. That's not our culture. And yeah, we do block road, but it's just block road. And it has a certain connotation to it that we just like a block road and make up noise and nothing gonna happen out of it. So you're 100% correct. I'm a strong believer of, to create change, you have to make people uncomfortable. You have to agitate. You have to make them uncomfortable. And I think that a lot of the problems surrounding some of this civil action is that it's not properly thought out. So you'll go block the road, but you don't really have a clear list of objectives of what it is you want to achieve, who you're targeting, what you want to get from them, what will it take for you to not block the road anymore. And even for us as the JCCYC, a long time we want to go block road, but I think we're trying to be mindful of, doing it in the right way, at the right time for the right issue, so that you can have the most impact. And blocking road is not the only type of civil disobedience. Do you ever worry about getting blacklisted? Who are gonna blacklist me? Who is going to blacklist me? Them not hire me anyway. Me don't have no work. Sorry. No, I don't worry about being blacklisted. And if I am, I will take it in stride. I'm sure somebody will somewhere will appreciate me, and I will go there. But yeah, you know, in the advocacy space, you have to have that broad back there. And I understand that not everybody's in that position, because depending on your career, I'm not telling anybody to go cost the prime minister, because depending on your career goals and what you want to do, you have to be very mindful of, you know, what kind, especially if you're doing something publicly, how you do it, and uh, why you do it as well. So for me, I will always put myself out there on behalf of other young people, because I know that not everybody have the privilege there if you go, because them will lose them work, and not be able to get work and all of them some there. So yeah, no, that's my answer to about being blacklisted. I don't know who is going to blacklist me. Maybe I've already been blacklisted. Maybe that's why nobody no want to hire me. Maybe, who knows?
All right, thank you so much, Eleanor. I'm just going to make one last point, and guys, you can ask any questions afterwards and make any comments. But when you spoke about linking, for example, scientists, the government, and other tech experts, I remember one time, SciTech, we had this meeting, and a lecturer in chemistry, I forgot her name. She's really, really nice. She came and she spoke to us about what certain scientists are doing, and she brought up a phrase called science diplomacy. I've never heard about science diplomacy outside of her. I'm like, wow, this is a thing, this exists. So I think that would also be really great for our country as well. And as you said before, solutions aren't really the problem, it's really the people. So yeah, that's it from me, guys. You can jump in at any time.
On the topic of science diplomacy, I actually by accident ended up in a group called Union of Concerned Scientists. It's a US based group, but I really like the kind of work that they do, because every time there's a science issue going around, they will send out information. They will tell you how to reach your representatives, what to tell them, and you know, the American electoral system allows a lot more entries for participation than we do. That is a fact, and they have a lot more space for debate. But I like the approach that they took, because it was really connecting those science issues with what is happening in policy, and encouraging scientists to be a part of that part of the voice to the solution. I'd love to see that happen in Jamaica. I'm not sure what the space would be or what kind of form it would take, but I think it would be very impactful to apply that same sort of approach out here. Okay, so I have my list of people for when we're ready for Block the Road.
Woo! Yes. So again, Eleanor, thank you so much for coming and for joining us today, and for inspiring us and even teaching us, because I'm pretty sure we've all learned something new from this discussion, right? So guys, thank you for joining. And again, if you want to join the JCCYC, there's a link in the group chat.
Yes, we've posted, we've done letters to the editor, Lena, and Observer. So yes, we have, and that's something that we want to do a lot more of this year as well. Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
All right, so thank you. All right, bye guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. Make sure to sign up. I know a lot of people have been asking Kim if you can copy that and drop that in the WhatsApp group chat. That would be great. And yeah, enjoy your day, guys. And study for your mid-semesters. You're not failing. Yes. All right, bye.
Okay, failure wasn't the option. Can't fail. You mad?
That's right. That's it. That's the spirit.
All right.
Hi, everyone.
Bye, guys.